Welcome to the show Emboldened with Jessica. I'm Jessica, your host. And today we're specifically going to be talking about rebuilding connection in the loneliness epidemic. So we've talked a little bit about loneliness before and the harmful impacts it has on people, but today we're taking a slightly different approach. You know me, I love a little stat, okay? And so if we're looking at some of the stats about what defines this loneliness epidemic, the U.S. Surgeon General, the CDC, Associated Press, Harvard Graduate School of Education, Brown University Health, they've all decided, or they've looked at the data and concluded that we have a public health crisis. And what is essentially occurring is that there's a widespread, significant feeling of disconnection, and that it's impacting people's mental health, their physical health. And it's not a U.S. epidemic so much as it's a global health crisis. And that part of what's exacerbating is some of the challenges we have around technology, individualism, the pandemic-related isolation, fear of higher risk of chronic diseases. And yeah, so this is really impacting young people, minorities. It's really impacting a lot of people. And so because it is impacting a lot of people, we want to talk about some solutions. Part of what we're curious around is just who all is kind of feeling the heat. But Ariel, what have you kind of noticed and witnessed?
The main thing I've noticed is the spotlight going on the male loneliness epidemic, but
Mm,
I think it's going back to what you said. It's affecting so many more groups than just the males. It's like life before the pandemic and life after the pandemic, and just noticing how we are interacting with people. I feel like loneliness is really sliding in there more easily than it used to.
mm-hmm.
There used to just be ways where you could, like, yeah, let's call up whoever and we're going to hang out, or let's plan this big event and we're going to hang out then. And now I feel like there's a lot of, who can I reach out to
Mm-hmm.
hang out, and who will actually hang out with me?
And like, it's so wild because as you're talking and you're talking about like how it was, how you'd be like, yeah, let me see who wants to hang out and go do this random thing. Like I'm over here smiling, just thinking about like, ooh, that was so much fun. Yeah, on any given Saturday or Sunday, I'd be like, who wants to go to Chicago for the day? It was really easy to gather and there was some ease there. But because you mentioned the male loneliness epidemic, I think we have to discuss it a little bit. And I think some of the dialogue around the male loneliness epidemic is hilarious because, when they talk about men not being lonely enough with some of the really wild, outrageous things that some men are saying about women or their expectations in relationships, it's just like, oh my gosh. Of course, you're single. I mean, of course, no one is choosing to interact with someone who is dysfunctional. And so while males, some of that is being highlighted, if we go back to the data, because some of it is funny, but some of it is, I don't know, it's nuanced. In 2021, some researchers concluded that 15% of men, and I saw this statistic kind of throughout, 15% of men claim they have no close friends. And a majority of men across generations feel that no one truly knows them well. And then there's more reliance on their partners for support and for everything, right? To be their mental health support, to be their social support, to be their romantic support, and to meet all of their sexual needs. And so about 16% of men say they're lonely all or most of the time. But I'm also seeing data pretty consistent that says for women, 15% say that they're lonely all or most of the time. And so it kind of brings to me, and obviously this is very binary, this gender that I have data for. I didn't see any data around folks that are non-binary or gender non-conforming. And so we're missing some information, but really it's looking like across the board, people are noticing that they're lonely most of the time or all of the time. I will say that as a therapist, a number of the men that I've supported over the years, there is a trend where there is an expectation that their female partner, because again, I don't see this with the gay men that I work with or the non-binary folks that I work with, But with men specifically, I see an expectation that their partner, their romantic partner, is going to be everything, that they're going to mother them, that they're going to be their professional coach and help them with resumes and jobs, and that they're also going to help out around the house, and that they're also going to be their mental health support. And it's like they're setting that system up to fail. And whenever I push back on that, because I do, I'm not pacifying or people pleasing or pretending like that's not a huge issue to expect one person to hold multitudes in that way for you. A lot of what the guys have said to me over the years is that they don't feel very connected to their guy friends. Like they don't feel like they can have depth of relationship with them. They don't feel like their moms or their siblings, that those are people that they can really share the expansiveness of what's happening with them. Like they don't want to disappoint them. But really feeling like a lot of their friends don't even really like them, but certainly that they don't trust their friends with anything. Some of that is really fascinating to me. Like, where is this coming from? Why are you choosing to continue to hang out with them? Why don't you have all of these expectations for them that you have for your partner? And so, yeah, I do think that there is a piece that's gendered, and I think that there's a piece of this this public health crisis that is impacting everyone.
Listening to you talk, it just makes me. I know we're going to talk more about the gathering aspect of rebuilding stuff after loneliness, but it also just makes me, and I think we've talked about this in previous episodes, about how to be a friend, because it's like you're hanging around these people and but you don't feel like you can trust them.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's like how do you get to the point where you do feel like you can trust a person and they can be a legit friend as opposed to an acquaintance or an associate or something like that? Like when do you cross that line of like, okay, this is actually a friend?
I think what you're talking about is a critical component of this loneliness piece, right? So we can feel lonely, and it's not that we're alone, right? Folks that are married, folks that are partnered, folks that have friends that are always around them are the people who are often communicating to me that they feel alone. Like, so
Yeah.
that it's really about, who do I feel seen with? Who do I feel safe with? Who do I feel like I can be my most full self with? And
Hmm.
have that not be judged. And like, especially for folks who are neurodivergent, you're thinking about, who do I not have to mask with? Or they're not going to judge me if I'm showing up in a way that is not typical. Which to me, I'm like, it speaks to, who can I really be weird with? And I think there's something about being young and youthful where for some of us, we're thinking about how others are perceiving us all of the time. Some people have been socialized to think that. But
Hmm.
when I think about being a kid or being in high school or those early 20s, I think about just being, I don't know, for me, I was more of my authentic version of self. And I was less worried about how that could be hurt or harmed, or how that could make me vulnerable, because I didn't
Hmm.
really have that many experiences of that with friends and peers. And I think as we get older, there's a shift that happens where we have experienced some betrayals, some heartbreak, some disappointments. And so then there's a different self that emerges. And so I think part of this episode is also the permission to know that you may not be the same carefree, super sociable person that you were once seasons ago. And so to be okay with that, if you're comfortable with the level of socialization that you're doing now, even if you're not going out as much as you used to, you're not connecting with friends like a few times a week, maybe it's a couple of times a month. If you feel fulfilled and comfortable and seen, then allowing that to also be okay. Because some things just have shifted.
Yeah, and it can go the opposite way too, where as you get older, you are actually getting more comfortable with yourself and you just care less. And sometimes your friend group has to adjust to this new version of you, where it's just like,
Mhm.
oh,
And the other piece that I also want to give permission for, not that anyone needs my permission, but I think it's really important to have certain things verbalized, is that we do live in a different world than we lived pre-COVID. And the reality of that means that economically, we're in a very different space. In terms of the environment, we're in a very different space. Politically, we're in a very different space. And so identities that felt safer before and were physically safer before, thinking about some of the immigration things that are happening, that's not the case right now. And one of the proponents we need as human beings in order to want to socialize and connect is safety. And so the safety that we're experiencing now is less than the safety we experienced some years ago. That kind of safety we don't experience anymore. And so that does shift us. So noticing also that if there is a belief that, you know what, it's not as free for me to connect with my friends if I'm undocumented. I don't have the safety in terms of traveling, or I'm trans, and it really is different. And so also allowing a little bit of normalizing that your body's response to maybe slow some of its movements and not connect with as many people is justified. And the other thing to me, like, okay, so some people might say, you know what, the world was just as safe 10 years ago or 12 years ago as it is now. One of the other things that happened is that we learned that some of our mentors, some of the people that we experienced religious events with or went to church with, some of our really good friends that we grew up with had beliefs that harm folks of our identity, folks of identities of people we love. And so to learn that, like, wow, people are not always as they present to be, I think that was really jarring. And it does cause you to have more pause. And who am I going to interact with? I've heard a number of people say, over the last few years, like when someone does invite them out, they're wondering, what are their politics? Can I talk freely about this? Like, will they be reporting my family member to ICE if I let it slide that they're undocumented? Will they be saying something about trans kids in sports that now I have to be like, oh my gosh, why did I allow myself at this event? So I just want to name some of that. I know people have been sitting with it, and maybe there has been some conversation you've had with others, but really in terms of some of that safety that is the requirement to connect, it does feel different. And I think it's a huge part of some of this public health crisis. So I think the short answer of who does this impact is it's impacting everyone. And so one of the things that Ariel mentioned last year was this beautiful book, The Art of the Gathering. The author of the book is Priya Parker, and it just talks about how to be really intentional in your gatherings, how you can create gatherings that are memorable, that are meaningful. And yeah, it's an amazing book. I read it a few years ago and I adored it, and I reread it for this episode because, as many of y'all know, my memory is not the best.
And I'm right there with you.
And it is one of those good books that you can revisit and continue to get something from. And so there's some different principles that are takeaways for me that I want to share. Are there any particular takeaways that you're thinking of right now, Ariel?
Intentionality as a host, but also intentionality as a guest.
And I think that is so critical because I think being a great guest is super important. And so I think that while people have a desire to be in community and to be connected with people, sometimes some of the people who very much want this, they actually don't want to be an active participant. And then I think sometimes culturally, we've been taught different things. I know growing up, when my family would go to other families' homes, we would never bring anything and we wouldn't help with anything and we would leave. We were like the worst guests. So it took me some time to learn and observe from other people like, oh, wow, when you go to people's place, it's really nice to bring things. So there's some things that I've learned. And one of our really amazing friends, Fred, who is no longer with us, was what I would consider like the super amazing guest of all time. And so I want to share some of the things the ways that he showed up as an amazing guest, which are things to consider. I feel like in order to be a good guest, we come at a timely time. Doesn't mean we have to be early, but we're also not coming like 20 minutes before the event is ending. One of the incredible things about Fred was he was the kind of guest who was really open-minded. He was really thoughtful. And so, you could kind of pair him with anyone. Like you could invite any of your friends, and Fred is going to be open, kind, get to know them, be curious, not at all fake, not at all pretentious. And it just made him a great guest, a guest that everyone would always say after they met him, when are we going to see Fred again? How's Fred doing?
Mhm.
Everybody wanted him on the guest list. Is Fred going to be there?
Mm.
And, he was able to have a depth of conversations about all kinds of things, even if he disagreed. He did that really respectfully. And again, he wasn't trying to be palatable for anyone. He was just his authentic self, but just a really, really deep person who enjoyed depth. And for some people, that's not really their thing, the depth piece. Like, they want to go to an event and get to know everyone a little bit. And so if that's you, honor and notice that, how do I mingle? How do I get around and kind of get to know everyone at this event? And then culturally, in some cultures, if someone is hosting an event, we bring something. So we might text the host before and say, hey, do you need me to bring ice or do you need me to bring anything specific? And if they're like, no, I got everything, there could be a signature, something that you bring to most people's gathering, like a little dessert or like a little appetizer or a gift for the host. It could be flowers for the host if you have a host that enjoys something like that. One of the cool things about Fred, not only did he always bring something amazing to eat, but he always had extra everything in his car. So like if you need an extension cord, if the speakers went out, he would have speakers in the back of his car. He would have a little bit of everything. I know there's some guests who, I have some really great friends who will often message me before and they'll offer to come early to help me with setup because I'm normally panicking right before an event, trying to get everything together. And so for some people that's supportive, for other people that's anxiety inducing to have a guest there early. So we're checking in. Some people, and this was something that Fred would often do, is he would initiate a cleanup and get other people in on the cleaning up, or he would stay a little bit later and help with cleanup. And again, for some people, they don't want their guests to engage in that at all. And they're like, no, just leave it. So you're checking in with yourself to see what you have the energy for, how you might want to show up for your friend. I'm not saying you need to do all of these things, but these are ways that you become a really great guest that people want to continue to invite to gatherings.
And I
And
will say, I feel like there's levels to it in a sense of when you figure out where you are with your friends, because like I think how you began is a good guest will kind of bring something or offer to help and things like that. But also sometimes when you're just hanging out with a legit friend, like
mm-hmm.
I rarely ever brought anything to your place.
And
Like
see,
if you were having a gathering,
yeah,
but
and
like
I
for
wouldn't
other
even
people,
think about that.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
because to me, I knew you would help with the music. If I needed support with something, you would. If I need you to take this food because I don't want to be looking at this cheese platter for the next week and be tempted by it, I know you'll take stuff. You know what I mean? So like,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be that you're bringing something physical, but there's some kind of offering. And again, like for everyone, it's different. Sometimes you have a friend that will help with something technical or they'll facilitate a game. If you're like, hey, can you facilitate this game? Or like, hey, when I'm in the back getting drinks ready, will you like help people with introductions? Or, there might be a role that feels supportive. So to me, it's never really occurred to me that Ariel doesn't bring things to events, which is wild because now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, I guess, I'm like going through my Rolodex. Not that you don't ever bring anything, but you
Mhm.
bring all these
Yeah,
other
I know.
things. Yeah.
I bring
And
myself. I
hello,
brought myself.
hello. And if you say you're coming, which is another, I
Yes.
think, very important thing. If you say you're going to come, well, how can we honor that commitment? But yes, you're right. Not everyone needs to bring something
So do
physical.
you think that in like to be a good guest, it's more of an active thing as opposed of a passive thing?
I think it depends on the person. Because to me, some of the active things, it happens before the event even happens, right? So to be a
True.
good guest, like if they're sitting at RSVPs and for you to respond and say, ooh, I'm not sure, but I'll know in a week and I'll let you know. And you let that person know.
Mhm.
So like you're communicative, I think then that is helping you to be a good guest. So if you come to the event, you're not super outgoing, you're just chilling, having a good time, you could still be a really good guest. But I do think that there's a level of participation. Like there's some kind of, and even if that's like after the event, letting people know, like, hey, I had a really good time meeting you, or, thank you for hosting this event. Like even a thank you, all of those
Mhm,
things.
mhm.
And I don't think you have to be super active and involved to do those things to show some engagement with the process.
For you personally, do you enjoy being a guest when it's people you know or people you don't know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I have to. Oh, that's so hard because, like, sometimes you go to an event and you don't know anyone, and there's some really great hosts. They're really
Mhm.
intentional about saying hi, making sure they're on time. Because, ooh, I just cannot stand an event I go to, and the people who are hosting it are not there. Okay, girl, I think it's Atlanta culture. I'm looking around like not the photographer and the videographers here and the host is not. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Love it.
um, so I think it depends. I love a well planned out and executed event. I think it is such an art, and I think it is so classy when people are really good at it. My sister-in-law, Marcella, she is a phenomenal host. And it's so interesting because I think you can have you can be outgoing, maybe not outgoing, and be a really good host. You're just considerate, you're noticing the details, you've been intentional, you've put love and effort into whatever it is that you're creating. So, I mean, if I'm thinking about like an event that someone has planned, I mean, a well planned out event, honey. And the well planning, I mean, they talk about this in the book, starts with the invitation. Like, how are we inviting people? How are we letting them know about
Ooh,
the
yeah.
event? And how are we giving them expectations of like what to expect? So I think about my brother setting me up on that bamboo hike on the bamboo trail. And he didn't tell me. Yeah, he did not give me all the details. Okay. I thought it was going to be a little leisurely walk.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. You all don't need to include this because that's awkward because I just chimed in without introducing myself or being part of the conversation. But I wanted to add something. So,
Mm-hmm.
right now, there's been a lot of TikTok conversation around a podcaster, and they were talking about hosting family. And it's just so interesting, everyone's perspective on what is considered to be a good host, what's
Mm,
considered to be a good guest, what are those expectations? So I think one thing that is helpful is to, I don't know if this is something that needs to be discussed, but understanding those expectations a little bit can help eliminate any sort of like friction or resentment on one side
that's
or the
true.
other. But one thing that he brought up, and there were a lot of people in the comments who were saying, like, I'm too X culture to relate to this because in different cultures, you host differently. And
Mm-hmm.
so this person and his wife, they're white, and they were just talking about how they had a lot of family over for the holidays. And they were very annoyed because, like, they would get up in the morning and they would cook breakfast for themselves, and they have like a small child,
Oh,
and
wow.
What?
and
Wow.
that their family would come into the kitchen and be like, "Ooh, what are we eating?
Yeah, of
What are you
course.
making? What are we about to have for breakfast?" And they're like, "Well, we're making
Wow,
breakfast."
that's so rude.
Yes, and
Wow.
then,
But also it's like, is it though? Is it rude?
I mean,
Yes. I'm
yeah,
not
if
gonna
you're
lie.
staying at someone else's.
I see it as rude because I
Yeah.
have people over at my place
Yes.
and I'm just cooking for myself. Wow, that is rude. But is it really though? Like, was there ever a precedent saying that we would be when we cooked, we'd be cooking for everybody? I'm sure that was never said.
Yeah, but if it's
yeah.
Christmas Day and nothing is open and it's your kitchen, so I don't
There's
know
milk
if I
and
have
cereal.
access.
There's milk and
Is there?
cereal.
I don't have milk and cereal at my
I
house.
wanted eggs and bacon, so I'm making me and my husband
Well,
eggs and bacon. But there's milk and cereal for y'all if y'all want it.
so there's more. So there's more. So
Okay.
this
Uh-huh.
particular day was not Christmas Day. This is just around the holidays while they're there.
Mm-hmm.
But on Christmas morning,
Mm-mm-mm.
family came into the kitchen and they said, "Ooh, what are we all having for breakfast? Let's make scrambled eggs."
Mm-hmm.
And the host, she was like, "Well, that's not magical. And she kind of pulled her husband to the side and was like, eggs, scrambled eggs. I don't want that. Like, this is Christmas morning. I want something special. We
Okay.
need, and so then she's frustrated, annoyed about that. And so then her husband then communicate because it's the husband's family.
Oh, okay, okay.
So then the husband then communicates like, okay, like, yeah, scrambled eggs. Why would we do that? Like, can we have something special? It's Christmas morning. Like, can we make some pancakes? Can we do this? And it's like, in my opinion, I'm like, I don't know. Can you? Like, it's your house.
Yes,
So,
of
Yeah.
course. What ingredients did you
how
prepare? Yes.
how come you, knowing you're hosting on Christmas Day,
Mhm.
if you want to have a special breakfast, how come you didn't plan that ahead of time?
Mhm.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
there's this whole idea of like hosting, being a good host and
Yeah.
being intentional and planning for stuff as a host.
Yes.
And then also just this whole aspect of family versus like if it were friends. I feel like that's a different aspect too. Like because if it's family, sometimes people just don't care. Like my sisters come in, they'll take care of themselves because they're family. But if it were a friend, there'd probably maybe a whole itinerary.
But at least if it's family, if there's the expectation that, hey, when we're hanging out with each other, we do meals on our own, then there's an expectation there that's been communicated. So then that's not wrong because now everyone knows what to expect. And if they're not okay with that, then they just won't come.
But when it's family, there's so many things that aren't always communicated because
Mm.
it's family.
Yeah,
They
but
should
then that's
already know.
dysfunctional. That's
And I
dysfunctional.
fully agree.
Yeah, because there's some interesting things that I've heard over the holidays about people not communicating expectations with family, and it's like, man, it really can impact someone's vacation time, their holiday. But this story, Kathleen, it reminds me of you guys remember on Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I think it was Kenya who was hosting them,
Kenya's
and
a horrible
yeah, she's
host.
a horrible host. She didn't
She's
have
a
any food for
horrible
them.
host.
And Candy was
Yes.
losing it and ordered that food. Or I think Kenya maybe ordered food for herself, but nobody else. And they
Yes,
all
for
were
her and her daughter,
starving.
right?
Yeah, they all were starving. And it's just like, how are you going to do that? Like, part of, especially if people are staying with you or you got a place for them to stay, is that, and there's, I mean, it looked to me like a place like, not like they could go walk and get food. And in some countries, being able to order DoorDash, things like that is not necessarily available. But it's like, how are you going to order food for yourself and eat in front of everyone else?
I tell you, it's like home training.
It
Some people
is.
have different home training, and maybe how Kenya saw being a host is all you do is get the location. She had the location. She got them
Yeah.
from the airport to the place, and then I think she's didn't she say she was like going to take care of dinner maybe?
I think that's what she said. But she had also gone on other trips that other Real Housewives had hosted. And so there is a point of
Oh,
where
that
do
doesn't
we
make
where do we learn, right? Because like I said, growing up, we
yeah,
would go to people's
yeah,
houses, we would bring nothing, we would help with nothing, and we would leave. Okay. And so, it wasn't until college that I started to notice, like, oh wow, you know what? It's actually a lot of work for people. And there are ways to bring little things. It doesn't have to be anything super significant or big, but just as a thank you. Or there's ways to like help out with cleaning. Like you don't leave right after the meal. We would leave
oh,
right after the
true.
meal. We wouldn't
I
even
mean, on
socialize.
on both sides, it's just leaving out assumptions and alleviating expectations. Like
Hmm.
it comes down to communications and
Yeah.
what people are expecting from you as a host
Hmm.
and as a guest.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that was timely and sensational. Sensational. Okay, so we're nipping at it, but let's get into it. Well, let's talk about being a great host a little bit more.
Yeah. I feel like Jessica, you could take the crown on this one from my standpoint. You are a great host.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. I try really hard. I appreciate
I
that
mean,
so much.
like there's just a lot of background information that you take into account when you are a host.
One of the things that the author of The Art of the Gathering talks about is that, to be really purposeful in who is this gathering for. And so one of the things I try to do when I'm hosting an event is think about who's going to be there and how will they get along. And hey, this person actually needs to connect with this person because of the work that they do. Like this could be really cool. So yeah, thinking about who's the event for, what is the purpose, kind of having a theme. And I think having a theme or a title is something else I talked about in the book. I often try to have a theme or a title so people know what to expect. I think that is super important. And one of the things that I absolutely hate, and that is a very strong word, but I absolutely I hate when people don't give you realistic expectations for the event. So again, if I think we're going on a walk and it's a hike and it's a serious hike, you got to give me some information. But another thing that I know people really loathe is at work when they call something a retreat, but it's really a long meeting. I hear a lot of people complain about that, and I hate that too. In all my many years of working, I only had one quote unquote retreat that was actually really nice and restful. And we just got to it was me working at a counseling center, and we went to these gardens and we did a cozy little s'mores event. And it was the only time that it actually was a restorative retreat, and it wasn't just a long meeting. But yeah, having realistic expectations so people know what to expect and thinking of a name that is going to resonate. Another piece that I think it's important when we want to be a good host is we're also thinking about what barriers exist for people and how can we reduce them. So, for example, if I know that I'm inviting people who have kiddos and they're going to need to find a babysitter, I might give a little bit more notice so they have time to do that. I might also send out a little poll to some of the people I really want to be there to see what dates are going to work the best for them. If I have some friends who mask and I know have a pre-existing condition, I might talk to them about maybe coming early to the event when a lot of people aren't there, or how can I open up windows or have an air purifier on to support them, or have a space that maybe they can go to have a meal or drink water, things like that. And so, yeah, we're thinking about who's there, how can we make it comfortable and fun? And then also, I like to utilize my guests to help out with things. Like I said, Ariel's normally the DJ because I'd be having a hard time with the music and technology.
I also think with you, and I think a lot of good hosts do this, and I feel like this is the advanced level of hosting, is you really start to think about people's personalities and how they'll interact with another personality, and seeing if they can make a connection and actually be friends too, or foreseeing future conversations that could happen at whatever thing you're hosting. You're thinking about, can they be in the same room? Do they have history? There's just an advanced level that I feel like a really good host takes into consideration.
Yeah, I think events are a wonderful opportunity for people to build connection, build community. And so I try to be strategic about that. One of the things that they talk about in the book is even how we do introductions for people. So sometimes it can be hard because people are coming in at different times at some events. And so it's each time someone comes, doing a whole nother set of introductions can be challenging. But if it's a group of where most people know each other, it might be a point, whether it's a dinner where there's this fun way that we all introduce ourselves. And I always try to give, when I introduce someone, I try to give some fun facts about them that's not just about what they do for work. I mean, work is work, I guess. I mean, some people that's a real big part of their identity. But for the people that I love and for my friends, there's so many really cool, unique aspects to their personality or things that they're passionate about. And those are the things that I want to highlight and share for people. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And then food and drinks, I think is very, very, very important. Okay, don't be inviting me somewhere and there's no food and there's no drinks and you think I'm gonna be there for hours. What is this?
That's an advanced quality of hosting, because some people don't care. If we're still bringing up the Kenya situation, that for some people that's not high on the priority list of hosting.
Yeah, and that's a whack of it. Okay. It is. I mean, you think about some of these work retreats where it's an all-day meeting and you're not providing food. What is this?
I think that's rude.
Or, it's a fundraising event and you're paying $150 for your ticket, and there's an expectation that there's going to be food. Like, they say a meal will be provided. And they hit you with a bag of chips and like a quarter of a sandwich. What is this? Like, I just feel like, especially if you think I'm going to write another check while I'm here, like I'm going to give you more money while I'm here, I need to be well fed and entertained. Like, so, and again, if that's the budget that you want to work with because you want most of the money to go towards whatever the fundraiser is, you're just real clear about that. And then you schedule the event not during like a meal time, because it's not just about people feeling fed and comfortable, but we also, there's so many dietary restrictions that you also want to consider when you're having an event, like, because I try to think about what people's allergens are and making sure that's not there or that foods are labeled. And so, yeah, there's some people who they have low blood sugar or they need to take their medication with food. And so, if you're not going to provide that because it's not part of the budget, which is fair, then it's not a meal. We don't advertise it as a meal, and we don't do it during meal times. That's just my thoughts on the matter. The other thing that I want hosts and guests to also be aware of is their social battery. And everyone's social battery is a little bit different. And so noticing, like, if you're aware that after 4 hours, you're ready for your guests to leave, what is the way that you're going to communicate that? Everyone has their kind of way. Some people are really funny about it. Some people are really blunt about it. The music just goes off. The lights turn on, And so maybe it's that you put an end time on the RSVP. Maybe it's that you have some kind of closing event where you go around the group and you have some kind of game or something that you're playing to kind of round out the event. But just being aware what your social battery is, because as a host or a guest, we don't want to go past that and then be dealing with like the burnout of that, or where we're really snippy or we're harsh or mean with people that we're gathering with.
Yeah, you mentioned host and guest, but also to like just putting a little emphasis on like being a guest as well. When you feel your battery going down, like make sure you're checking in with yourself to see like, am I still comfortable, or do I feel like I'm getting a little anxious, or is it time for me to go home?
Hello.
And being okay with like, all right, gotta go. Just checking in with yourself. And also, if you're a true introvert, you're going to have an exit plan.
I know that's right. And I believe in having an exit plan for everyone. Yeah, like if you have a really good friend or a relative who wants to stay to the very end of the event, don't ride together. Or make sure you're not parked all the way deep into the driveway where in order to get out, a bunch of people are going to have to move. Be real strategic when you arrive and how you arrive and how you can leave. And I think being a good host means not giving people a hard time if they have to leave early, because that is the worst. When you're ready to go and they're like, no, don't leave. I want to introduce you to this person. Now I want to start up this conversation. No, we need to do this. And it's like, man, that is the worst. And we all know people like that. And it's one thing, I know in a lot of Black social groups, we do the long goodbyes, but that is reciprocal. We're both doing the long goodbyes. Like I'm saying I'm leaving and I grab my hat and I'm still standing there talking. And then, then I have my keys. An hour later, I'm at the door frame, but I'm not beyond the door frame. And then 30 minutes, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that is consensual and that's mutual. But I think when someone says they have to leave, they got to go let their dog out. They have to relieve the babysitter, or they're tired, they got to get back on the road, whatever it is, we just thank them for coming and we let them know how much it mattered that we got to see them, spend time with them. We hope they get home safely, and we leave it at that. We don't need to give someone a hard time and guilt them to do something beyond their comfort zone, beyond their social battery. I think I want to touch on this piece that they started with the art of the gathering. And that was about how authoritarian governments, the first thing that they want to remove is gathering, due to the power and the ability of people who are united and communicating regularly to not be harmed, abused, to have their power withheld from them. And so even though the safety is different, even though we may not always desire to be connected in community, I think that if we feel the desire, if we have a little bit of energy, a little bit of charge around, maybe I want to be with people, knowing that it's one of the really important rights that we're supposed to have. It's the ability to gather, to be in community, to connect. And so for some people in this time, maybe they're gathering a little bit more online and online communities because maybe that feels safer. Like I said, maybe they have a compromised immune system, or maybe the social battery is such where, or even where they live is so isolated that that's the way that they gather. So I just want to put that out there, that the art of gathering is not just something that is fun and it helps with this public health crisis, but it's also something that allows us to continue to have power in our lives, in our government, in our world, in our community. So really important.
Perfect. Yes. Be the resistance and gather. Don't buy into the loneliness if you can like avoid this whole epidemic. That's what they want you to do.
Yes, they do.
Jessica, do you prefer to be a host or a guest?
Ooh, wow, that's so fascinating. I like both, actually. I really do like hosting, but it's also stressful and it's energy. It's a lot of energy. So it depends on who I'm hosting and what I'm hosting for. But I do really like hosting. But I also really like being a guest. And it depends on, again, right, they got to be a good host. Okay. But I love sitting down and having someone offer me a bunch of delicious food and they have a nice curated evening of events. Like it's super entertaining. There's fun people there. There's an occasion to get dressed up. I do really like a good event. I'm less social than I used to be, but I would say it's probably 50-50 right now. What about for you, Ariel?
I'm supposed to be a guest. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a really good guest
You
because
are.
even when things are crappy,
Hmm.
I will be sitting
That is so
somewhere
true.
with a semi smile on my face, just happy to be there,
That is so
even if I'm
true.
like planning a way to leave. Like
Yeah.
I'm a really good
You
guest.
are a really good guest. You're almost always one of the first names on my guest list. Okay. And if it's something you can't attend, I'm secretly quite sad. Not so secretly, because I'll be like, oh. You'll be
Now
like, I'm
you
a
really
maybe. I'll be like, oh. I will say the other thing I just want people to be really expansive about when they're thinking about gatherings is that this could be social clubs, this could be an open house for a business that you've just started, or maybe you're hosting an open house for a friend's business that was recently started. So this could be virtual game nights, work meetings, family gatherings. So just to be expansive when you think about gatherings, it could also be community service, like maybe it's a park cleanup or some kind of humane shelter visit. And so, yeah, I just want to put that out there also, that not just events and parties, but all of the gatherings.
I dig that. Do you want to reflect on a past hosting experience that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I just love having a bunch of cool people in a room, laughing, acting up, having a good time. While I like doing events for work and I like doing those kind of events, my favorite group of people to host is usually like my very close friends, family. That's usually lots of fun for me.
I dig that. I'm not gonna lie, I do miss game night. God,
Yeah.
trying to find like a low key group of people who will have a game night is proving to be very difficult. Like it's always a
Mhm.
big extravaganza. I'm like, can we just play Taboo? Can we play Uno?
Mhm. Mhm.
Have some pizzas delivered and just be in community?
I do want to remind folks, or not remind folks, but I want to put it out there that Emboldened with Jessica on Instagram has moved. So you might feel like you're already following Emboldened with Jessica, and you're probably following my personal page, Jessica Jackson LCPC, because I changed them. So if you're not yet, please go and follow on Instagram, Emboldened with Jessica. And there you will find clips from the episodes, you'll see content that relates to some of our episodes, and you'll just see funny, deep, awesome content. Okay, get into it. Are you enjoying the show? Subscribe and review to let us know what you think. And share this episode with a friend in your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for listening to Emboldened with Jessica. If you want to keep up with us, follow Emboldened with Jessica on Instagram or Facebook. Until next time.